The opinions expressed in the following programs are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers nor Rogers TV.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Welcome to another episode of In Conversation with Alethia. I'm your host, Alethia O'Hara Stevenson. In each episode, I sit down with amazing individuals from our community who are doing inspiring things. The show will educate, it will empower you, and it will inspire you. This week, I am honored to have an incredible trailblazer in our community. He is no other than Chef Phil Dewar. He is a former owner of Soulyve, and he's now owner and operator of Soulyve Catering. Above and beyond that, he's a community leader, a community champion, an advocate. He's a family man, a father of two incredible children. Please welcome to the show, Phil. It's an honor to have you here.
That's an excellent intro. Pleasure to be here.
An intro fit for the title of Chef Phil Dewar, renowned in our community and beyond.
Thank you. If you could just travel with me and introduce me every place like that, then I'll feel
Absolutely,
good.
at a cost.
Okay.
No, but in all seriousness, it's an incredible honor to have you on the show. And, you know, wherever I go in Dufferin County and even beyond, I know the restaurant Soulyve closed a few years ago. But to this day, you know, people are still talking about the Soulyve and the legacy of that restaurant and the impact that you've made on the community. And I still hear about reggae raps. So kudos to you for, you know, leaving your footprint, your legacy in Dufferin County. Today's show is not talking about the restaurant. Today's show is talking about how you have evolved since closing a Soulyve restaurant into your catering business. Can you share a little bit about that journey and where you are today?
Yeah, I can do that. First of all, thanks. Happy to be here. And, you know, the restaurant closed, it's going to be 5 years now.
Wow.
It's going to be 5 years at the end of this year. It was such a great time, such a great ride. And, you know, what that did for me was open many doors and many opportunity. I think the way how we, you know, lots of people in the restaurant business go down based off finances or, you know, other definitions of failure. And we left on our own terms because, you know, just as a individual, as a family, we just want something different. And I think people respect that, you know, when you hang your hat up on different virtues. So it opened a lot of doors post-restaurant. One of the projects I took on initially was the Be Social Dufferin.
Yes.
And so, you know, that allowed me to use my restaurant smarts, not necessarily, you know, culinary skill, but also just like restaurant smarts, you know, your inventory, the finances, the operations, and the systems of managing food service.
Right.
And I was working with the community live in Dufferin. We revitalized the snack bars in Alder Arena, Tony Rose. We now have one in the Edelbrock Center. And we were working closely with the food bank on building their program for all their surplus. So when the food bank gets donation, it allowed us to kind of create prepared meals for the people that use the food bank.
That's powerful.
And so instead of them receiving raw ingredients, sometimes we know the marginalized community, they might not have the pots, the pans, the skill set, the tools, microwave, toaster oven, all of these things to execute meals when they get their package from the food bank. So the food bank was trying to implement a program that gave them the surplus meals prepackaged so that they could take home ready-made meals. And so that was fun. You know, during COVID, a lot of those programs took a beating because the arenas were closed, food bank was kind of not in person. It was just a different time, as we know. And, you know, so those programs for me came to an end. They're still in place now, and I'm glad that they're still operating and they are thriving as far as I'm concerned. And then after that now, I had to kind of choose a path for myself. As a word I'm using now is culinarian. It's just a word I kind of put together.
I like that.
You like
I
it?
like that.
Yeah,
Culinarian.
yeah. Culinarian. And so, working with local farmers and just kind of finding my food identity. I think because I spent so many years as Soulyve,
right,
it was important for me to redefine what my vision and what my journey as a chef would look like. And so I took some time to, connect with people who are like-minded, connect with people who I admire and want to work with, and just kind of get goods from them. You spend 10 years building your own business, 14 years really, 10 years as a restaurant, building your own business. Sometimes you miss out on those growing experiences.
Yes, yes.
And the nurturing that I would have gotten as a young chef, I really missed out on because you're running your own business. And so kind of taking a step back to be around other people. And so it happened that some farmers, some other food service persons,
yes,
some, independent people kind of gathered together, and we started a small program called Farm Education.
Okay.
Yeah.
And tell us a little bit more about the farm education, because I believe you're looking at basically from the farm to the table and the entire process of growing your own vegetables and your own food preparation that you're going to turn around and eat.
That's right. Yeah. So the farm education started as a brainchild with myself and is a farmer, Jamie Andrews. Sorry, not Jamie Andrews, Jamie Richards, sorry. He was actually a horticulture teacher in the high school, and me and him kind of had some talks and dealings then. And then years later, he supplied some greens to our restaurant, and we started this small exchange program. And then years and years later, now I kind of reconnect with him, and he has a farm store. And so we took his surplus. So after he sold the nice looking carrots and celery and peppers, he's a produce farmer.
Right.
Some of the ones that don't look so nice and the ones
not
that
so pretty, yes.
he would say, well, what can I do with these? And so we would create for him pot pies, stews, soups, and sell them back at his farm store. So I think just closing the loop on some of those gaps in the food chain supply.
Yes, yes.
We kind of started that program. And
you know what I'm hearing from this conversation, though, sorry to interrupt you, Phil, but it's the power of relationships, and you're able to build that relationship and connect back with someone who you met years ago while you were running your restaurant. And that's a powerful lesson for our young people in the importance of connecting with people. It's so
important. Relationships is probably one of the biggest things I could say that, I'm here too. Our relationship.
Absolutely.
I think relationships is very important. I think people should take time to nurture those and take time to respect them and evaluate them sometimes, especially during, we spoke just kind of off camera about, COVID times, Black Lives Matter times. Sometimes you have to reevaluate what those relationships look like. And
Absolutely.
So Jamie was doing wonderful work. We brought on some guys, some chef colleagues of mine, and we started this farm education program where people could come there, pick their own food, and just see what it's like.
Yeah.
Spend a day at the farm, know how this thing is grown, know what season it comes in. And even for me as a culinarian, I would just order, or you just order stuff and you bring it to your menu and you do what you have to do. But oftentimes we don't know what a day looks like to bring those things from seed to grow, right? And so that was just interesting for me. It allowed me to, just kind of answer some questions for myself. And
I love that.
Coming from where I come from, a lot of stuff is fresh, and we just eat kind of what's on the tree or what's in the marketplace. And what I began to understand, the biggest lesson I took from working with Jamie was, things like pickling, things like canning, preserving. These are things that's not so readily practiced in islands and, Afro-Caribbean cuisine.
Okay.
Now here, the indigenous folks, and then going into here, the settlers and people who came here from other cold places know about preserving those things for those long, harsh winters. And that's not something that I was very strong on as a chef. So learning some of those things and being in those environments with other chefs and learning that asparagus is only coming one time a year. What you're gonna do with it and how you're gonna elongate the season to get those nutrients so that in December, January, February, we can still have asparagus to eat, right?
I never thought about that, right? And something so simple as asparagus, you can't get it, you know, the entire year, but preserving it is so important.
Correct.
And here you are, an expert chef, but you're learning something new at this stage in your career.
Yeah, man. I think that's important to continue to learn, be a student of the game. And, you know, I think people who may be born and raised in Canada or in these areas, they will know about that. In the fall, I remember in high school friends like, oh, come over for, we're canning tomato. And I would say, well, what's the hype? You know, I didn't understand. But this is tradition, this is culture of these areas, these region. And so it's important for myself, in my opinion, to kind of tap into some of that stuff and kind of bring it into my tool belt as a chef and say how we can continue fostering those tendencies and some of those practices.
I like that. And, you know, you're talking about preserving. When I think about from a culture perspective, when we think of preserving, you're curing meats, right? So your jerk seasoning, that's as a result of preserving it and making sure that you're able to have that meat for a long time.
Even the saltfish, that's very prominent in Caribbean cooking. That's a form of preserving, you know, packing it with the salt for the travel. And so, you know, those are kind of things that was interesting to learn. People were coming to the farm. We experienced a really good time. Nice to be outdoors, cooking on the open fire. Those kind of things, it was good to kind of spread out from inside, you know, that pressure cooker of a kitchen. And the time people walk in to the time they get the food and kind of allowing the food and the outside to dictate. Because when you have a live fire, if the breeze is blowing this way, you have to cook on the other side or shield it some way.
Things you take for granted,
Yeah, so it was a good experience. And so that was one of the main projects post Soulyve, or the second main project post Soulyve.
Okay. Now you touched on sustainability a little bit. How important in this day and age is sustainability when it comes to, you know, cooking and culinarying, as you call it? You know, so there's sometimes I think it becomes cliche. You know, everybody's sustainable. I think we have to be realistic in the culinary arena to understand that it's profits driven. You can't always be as local and sustainable as possible. Now, there's other ways you can choose to practice that. If you know, in my new project that I'm doing, which we'll talk about, I'm sure. Second that.
You know, we you know, all our compost is going to a worm farm where this lady has an acreage and all the biodegradable containers, all the compost materials going to her farm, worms on worms. She has a process where she's moving it along in stages. And she's taking that soil and bringing it back to the farm where they plant the hops and so on and so on and so on. So it doesn't always have to present itself. Sustainability doesn't always present itself in, well, I'm buying from this farm next door just because, or paper straw, which was kind of the rage at one time, or this and that. And so I think everybody has to understand what suits their business, but there's other ways you can choose to be.
We're going to pick up on the conversation in the second episode, so hold that thought. We're going to come right back.
I will.
So we're in the studio with Chef Phil Dewar. Oh my gosh, I'm forgetting your name. With Chef Phil Dewar from Soulyve Catering, and we're talking about right now life after Soulyve. We're going to pick up the conversation with sustainability.
My daughter is 7 years old and has a frenemy. They have play dates that always end up in a fight or tears. This friend bosses her around and treats her poorly, but she still wants to be her friend. What's a parent to do?
I would let them acquiesce to a certain amount, and then, you know, when they're at this age, you still need to be supervising their play dates. So I might step in, not to correct the bossy child, but it's my child that I'm concerned about. I would just expose her to other people, teach her to have a voice, and let her know that she's got options.
Welcome back to In Conversation with Alethia. I'm in the studio with Chef Phil Dewar from Soulyve Catering, and we're going to pick up the conversation talking about sustainability. And before the break, we were talking about the whole ecosystem of taking biodegradables and bringing it to a warm farm, something, again, I've never heard of. So pick up the conversation and tell us a little bit more about that entire ecosystem from scraps to the warm farm back into...
Yeah, so if I'm to be clear, I'm part of that food supply. We have a food truck now at the Good Lot Farmstead Brewery.
Nice.
And so these guys have really tapped me into what it's like to work on a farm, live the farm life, and how food ties into the cycle. And so they're the ones who really put me onto this. They have the partnership. I provide the food and food service for their farm brewery, and I'm learning about their different partnerships that's going on. So they are a farm-based brewery that they grow the hops, and they use the hops to create the beer. Now, once they create the beer, if you know the beer process, there's all this spent grain that goes over to another farm where they feed that to the pigs and the cows there. So every step along the way, they're trying to be as sustainable as possible. And I'm learning a lot from them. And this is where they've introduced me to this young lady, which her name slips me now, but she has this worm or compost farm, and she takes all of the compost from the food service, from where we run the truck, and then she will bring that to her farm. Worms will, over the course of months or however time, I'm not sure all the time, biodegrade, and she brings that dirt back to the farm, and they grow more hops again. So they put that back on. So it's like I'm learning a lot from them in terms of what sustainability looks like. So as I was saying just before the break, everybody for their own business should determine what sustainability looks like for them. I think we get caught up in the cliche of some of the things that what's mainstream, and it doesn't always work, and so find what works for you and find how you can contribute, even if it's a little bit. It will help the world, help our globe continue to preserve itself, right?
That's amazing, and this is something that often individuals in our community don't often think about. If I think right now, when I think about sustainability back home, Jamaica specifically, there's so much compost, and we don't utilize it to the best of our abilities. So this is a great lesson, and I'm hoping that you can take this lesson and evolve it in more ways, so that more members of our community can become familiar with it, not just the Black community or Jamaican community, but all communities.
Correct.
But learn from it and expand on that knowledge.
Well, every step along the way, like I've told you, between the Post Restaurant, the Be Social, Ambre Farm, Farm Education, Good Lot Farm, and the Good Spot Food Truck, and even my own catering, I'm continuing to learn.
Yes.
One of my, not regret, but one of the things I often think about is all the time you spend in the restaurant leading a team. Sometimes it's important to sit back and learn too. And so I'm taking some of those formative years. Now I feel like I'm getting some of that nourishment now, and I'm excited for that.
To learn.
Yeah, I'm excited about that.
Awesome.
It's helping to shape my career and give me some different direction, and and you also have time for other endeavors, right?
Yes.
And so that's going on.
And speaking of other endeavors, I know you've been heavily involved and invested in the community, and most notably recently you participated in a chef cook-off, I believe it was, that was for sickle cell awareness.
Right.
So for our viewers, sickle cell is an illness. It's a blood disorder that predominantly affects the Black community and some Hispanic communities, and it is recorded that I believe 1 in about 500 births in America have sickle cell, and I think 1 in a larger number for Hispanics. So it is something that is quite common. And what it deprives the blood of oxygen, and so it can be very painful. And I have friends who have the sickle cell anemia. That's essentially what it is. But can you tell us a little bit more about your role in that chef cook-off and what was so important for you to participate?
Yeah, so I gotta be. So this is almost 7 years I'm doing this.
Wow.
Yeah, this is 7. We paused over the COVID times, but this is 7 years that I've been working with, alongside the United Achievers Club of Brampton. And so annually they keep this fundraiser where they invite chefs to come to do kind of like a small competition. It's kind of a peer-based thing where people and tables will judge and come up and get sample tickets and generate some funds for the sickle cell awareness. And so sickle cell is in my family. I carry the trait, if you understand a little bit more about the disease, which we won't get into, but I carry the trait, and my dad has sickle cell. So I remember even when, my wife and I were pregnant with our kids, it was important for us to get tested and check out all these things and find out if, so she's not a carrier at all.
Right.
And so these are things that only as an adult I started to understand, and so it just kind of hits close to home. We know it affects the Black community, in in small increments, more numbers. And so I just thought it was something that hits close to home. I've been kind of going there year after year to it's a good community organization. Right. Miss Marjorie and Lucinda Slowly, they're wonderful people. And I just, Charles Matthews is the MC, and his son suffers from sickle cell really aggressively. And so even growing up, one of my good friends, his younger brother, always in the hospital, always in the hospital, and we didn't even know what that was about. And again, sickle cell. So,
and it's also a very painful illness too, right? So it's not just so much the anemia, the fatigue. There is excruciating pain that comes a lot with it, and so much so that you often have to be hospitalized.
And get morphine. So I've watched my dad battle this thing for so many years, and signing up, it just so happened, I think, the universe sometimes works in a strange way. It's a strange thing. He was not necessarily championing my decision to become a chef in those times. 2003 or 4, he was kind of like, well, think about this, or, engineer, or something more, what he would...
Like all parents, right?
Yeah, you want the best for your kids. So it just so happened he was here. They live in the States. He happened to be home. And I just said, look, you want to come out and come to this thing? He didn't know what he was getting himself into, and he just came. And so it was just a nice time for him to talk with people who go through the same experience and unlock and ask questions and realize that, wow, you've been doing this for that long, and just see the power of food.
Wow.
And see how it was affecting change, how it was bringing people together, awareness, and also just for me and him to kind of connect,
Yes.
And as you know, sometimes the relationship can be strained, so it was good for us over these years to kind of get back a little closer.
Love it.
And so it was important to me in multiple ways, and on top of that, it allows you to showcase your culinary skill, because now you're going against other chefs, not just in this region, but from far and wide, Hamilton, Milton, Ajax. And so sometimes you get to know, where you're at, and you kind of test what's going on. And so we won second place in one category, and then we won the crowd favorite, which, apart from the judges, I've always cooked for the people, and I believe that the power is in the people. So for me, when we win the People's Choice Award, that to me is perhaps more gratifying than if we won some judges award. So I left there feeling very happy. My old man had a good time, and I think they're doing great work on top of that.
No, that's great. And, shout out to Papa Dewar. So, I'm happy that you guys were able to connect. But again, this just shows that there's so much more to Phil. There's Chef Phil, Soulyve Catering, but you're also a giver to the community, which is a testament to the well-roundedness of you as an individual. Now, we've touched on so many things in this short period of time, but what's next? What can we expect next from Chef Phil Dewar?
That's a good question.
I know you have something up your sleeve, so you always do.
It's strange. It's strange because right now I'm content where I am, but I believe in the power of food, and that's, I think, where I always start. I believe in the power community. And so sometimes it leads you in places, and I'm open to where it's going to lead me next. I don't have any particular bullet point as to where I'm going. Right now, we're content. Right now, we're doing wonderful catering. It's a busy time of year now. We are busy at the food truck, and, you know, we're looking forward to a busy season. We have a good group behind us.
Nice.
And so I will let some of those doors open as they do, and as they always have, as you continue to do the work, you know? And so that's kind of where I'm at right now. I haven't really pointed any direction at this time.
And that's fair. Now, we're coming towards the end of the show, and, you know, I want to touch on talking about, you know, fast forwarding. So in 2003, your dad wasn't a fan of you going into the food business. You have young children. What message would you want to give to them as they embark on they're still young, but as they embark on their journey in life? What message do you have for them?
Well, one thing I learned from myself is that you just support them whichever way they're going. And they know that anything they want to do, you know, we're behind them 100%. Up to the other day, you know, my daughter says, "Oh, I wanna make my business card," and so, you know, you spend time on the computer, copy and paste, and give her and print off something, and so she feel good. She put it in her purse.
Love it.
And so these are the kind of things that you know, you foster in whichever way. My son plays some sports right now. He's a good artist, and so, you know, we put him in spaces that are going to support him. Right now, he's doing. They're booked for summer camp at Streams Community Hub up in our town of Shelburne. So between photography and group work and you know, art and theater and dance, we just can continue to expose them so that they know and their future will afford them options. And so that's kind of the place I'm at for them right now. Just provide them options, plant seeds in different areas so that when they're ready, they can kind of reap and pick from different areas and whatever suits them.
I love that. And on that note, we are going to wrap up this show, right? This is
great.
Perfect way to end. You know, our young children can reap the seeds that they've planted or that you've planted in them over the years. So thank you so much, Chef Phil, for joining me on In Conversation with Alethia. We've talked about so many things. We've talked about life after Soulyve. We've talked about sickle cell anemia. We've talked about, you know, what legacy you want to leave for your young people. So it's been an honor to have you on the show, and I wish you all the best on your journey.
Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Appreciate it.
Wonderful. So thank you for joining us in Conversation with Alethia. Tune in next time. This has been an amazing episode with Chef Phil Dewar, Soulyve Catering.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.
That he fell.
Whoa, I'm not driving. I'm way too stoned. How are you feeling, beer?
Since we had that talk, I'm not driving tonight.